All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to get into the Vikings upsetting the 49ers 23-17. Now, this is a game where I did take the Vikings with the points because I said, well, last year, I kind of did factor in last year, even though this is a different season. But, the Vikings gave the 49ers some problems last year. They won that game in Minnesota. That was on a Monday night. And, you got Justin Jefferson back for this game, and he had a big game. Did have to leave the game with an injury, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be a long-term concern. You're already talking about playing next week, so that's encouraging. But you got Justin Jefferson in this game, and, it's the Vikings home opener. The Vikings have a good roster, so I thought they would at least keep the game close. Now, I did not think that they were basically going to, I don't want to say dominate, but they were in control of this game pretty much the whole time. The 49ers, coming off of their win against the Jets, Jordan Mason had that big game, but I didn't think he was going to have a big game again. He still played well. I mean, he didn't have 140 rushing yards, but he did have over 100 yards, I believe, and a touchdown. So, the 49ers still ran the ball well, and I just saw a clip of Brock Purdy and Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator of the Vikings, talking briefly after the game, and Purdy telling Brian Flores, your scheme is crazy. So, it did give Brock Purdy some problems yesterday because he had a couple of turnovers in this game. I know on social media, 49ers fans were saying if it wasn't for Fred Warner, the Vikings would have won by 20 because Aaron Jones looked like he was going in for a touchdown, and Fred Warner popped the ball out at the goal line. To start off this game, both teams punted. The 49ers actually, this was a big play early on. So the 49ers punt got blocked. Vikings cashed in with the field goal to make it 3-0. 49ers then turned it over on downs. They were right there. They were at the 2, but Purdy threw an incomplete pass to Juwan Jennings, who was the intended receiver. And then this was another big play. So on not the very first play, the second play of the drive, Sam Darnold connected with Justin Jefferson for 97 yards. And, credit to the official who was keeping up with that play all the way down the field. Must have been gassed after that. But 97 yards from Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson. And, like I said, the Vikings did not have Justin Jefferson in the game last year. They had Jordan Addison, who had a good game. But Addison didn't play in this game. So it was 10-0. Then the Niners, once again, they turned it over on downs. It was 4th and 2. Could not get it. But then Sam Darnold got intercepted. The 49ers cashed in and got a touchdown. Brock Purdy connected with George Kittle, so that made it 10-7. However, the Vikings, they were able to go down the field, get in the field goal range, get a 39-yard field goal to make it 13-7. And that was going into the half. Both teams exchanged punts to start off the third quarter, and then Brock Purdy threw an interception trying to hit Kyle Juszczyk. The Vikings, they cashed in. Darnold connected with Jalen Naylor for a 10-yard touchdown to make it 20-7. Then the Niners fumbled. Brock Purdy got sacked, lost the ball. Yeah, rough game for him. But then that didn't matter because then the Vikings ended up fumbling. And that was at the goal line, pretty much. Fred Warner popped the ball out from Aaron Jones. So already back-to-back weeks, he's making running backs fumble. Last week was Breece Hall, and this week it was Aaron Jones. And that led to scoring drives on both possessions. So, then the 49ers, they cashed in 12 plays, 99 yards to make it 20-14. That was Jordan Mason's touchdown of the game from 10 yards out to make it 20-14. However, the Vikings got another field goal. This time it was a 27-yard field goal to make it 23-14. Niners got another field goal, but they did not get the ball back, and they ended up losing. So Brock Purdy, did throw for over 300 yards, had a touchdown and an interception in this game. Also did lose a fumble, so a couple of turnovers for him in the game. Jordan Mason, another good game, 20 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. So, you know what? Even without McCaffrey, the 49ers are still going to have a good running game. I mean, I just didn't expect them to get, over close to 150, but still had a good game. Deebo Samuel, a couple of nice catches in this game. He had 8 receptions for 110 yards. George Kittle, 7 for 76 and a touchdown. Got carted off the field, but it was for cramping. He did come back in the game. But yeah, he had a good game. Ayuk, 4 for 43. Juwan Jennings, 2 for 37. Fred Warner had a big game though. Forcing that fumble of Aaron Jones. Also had an interception in this game. So yeah, he had 2 forced fumbles in this game, a sack and a pick. So he was all over the place. Nick Bosa had 2 sacks in this game. So the Niners finished with 4 sacks on the day. But yeah, it wasn't enough. Vikings, for them, in terms of their stats, Sam Darnold went 17 to 26, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Had another good game, other than the interception. I mean, that big play to Jefferson was unbelievable. And then Ty Chandler was actually the leading rusher for the Vikings. He had 10 carries for 82 yards. They ran the ball as a team for 146 yards. Justin Jefferson, a monster game, 4 receptions for 133 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Naylor, 3 for 54 and a touchdown. And there was, like I said, no Jordan Addison in this game. Once they get him back and they get TJ Hawkinson back, I mean, look out for this offense. And the Vikings on the day, like I said, Brock Purdy had a rough day. The Vikings sacked him 6 times. So he was under duress all day long. This Vikings defense is good. I know they played the Giants last week, but like I said, they gave the 49ers problems last year. There was no McCaffrey, and it was their home opener. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the Vikings with the points. But, I mean, I didn't expect them to win, but they did. And now they play the Texans next week. Look, the Vikings have a tough schedule. But you know what? They have a good roster. And you know what? If Darnold could keep playing like he's playing and you get guys back, you get Addison back, you get TJ Hawkinson back, this team's going to be a problem. One of the wild card teams that I had making the playoffs, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs the way things are going for them, and that's the Rams. The Vikings could be a team that, could go on a run if Darnold plays well, continues to play well. They got the Texans at home. They're at the Packers. They're in London for the Jets. I mean, the schedule is tough, but, I mean, you already beat the 49ers, who are one of the best teams in the NFL, so, I mean, they could beat anybody. And now you got the Texans coming in, who last night, they did look good, but, that Bears defense gave C.J. Stroud some problems. I mean, that game still ended up being close. And now they're going on the road against the Vikings, and the Vikings have a good defense. Yeah, that's going to be that's going to be an interesting game. You got Stephon Diggs going up against one of his other former teams in the Vikings. You got Jonathan Grenard, who was a former Texan, now going up against, or former Texan going up against his former team with the Vikings, and then Danielle Hunter, who was a former Viking, now going up against his former team with him being on the Texans. So that's an interesting game, some storylines to look at there. But like how the Vikings are playing early on in this season, if they get healthy, like I said, watch out. Sam Darnold could stay healthy and continue to play like this. This team could be a problem in the NFC. And then as for the Niners, I do have some concerns. Like the back end of their defense, that's something that's been a problem the last couple of years. That's one of my concerns. And just also with Christian McCaffrey being out, like Jordan Mason, had a good game. And once McCaffrey comes back, I mean, having him as a solid backup, I mean, he's playing really well right now, but having him as a backup with McCaffrey back, I mean, that's just going to make, they're going to have one of the best strong duos in the league when McCaffrey does eventually come back from IR. But McCaffrey just does so many other things for this offense, catching passes out of the backfield. He could do it all. And they are missing that dimension of this offense. And that puts more pressure on Brock Purdy. And what ends up happening is, you see it, Brock Purdy turns the ball over. I still think Purdy is solid. I understand where, the system quarterback stuff comes from, but you also still got to make the plays. And you know what? I think the Niners are going to be fine. I'm not saying you got to hit the panic button with this loss, because not every team is going to lose. No team is going undefeated. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. And the Vikings, it's not like the Niners dropped a game to a bad team. The Vikings are a good team. They have a good roster. I mean, you could say, well, you could push back on it if they're a good team. They have a good roster. I mean, you look at the playmakers that they got on both sides of the ball. They got a good team, and they're well coached. So I'm not really hitting the panic button with the Niners, but I do have some concerns. With McCaffrey being out, this hurts their offense. Deebo Samuel and George Kittle still had good games. Like, they still have enough playmakers where they're going to survive, and McCaffrey's eventually going to come back, and they're going to be okay. But, yeah, I mean, I do have a little bit of concerns with the Niners. But they're not like where you're waving red flags and sounding off the sirens like, yeah, this team is in trouble. No, they're not in trouble. This is what happened last year. Guys were banged up, and they went on a little bit of a lull period, but then they were able to figure it out, and they finished strong, and they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So, this is now early on in the season. This is the second week of the year. I get it, but they're going to be okay. They're well coached. They're going to figure it out. And they take on a Rams team who is just ravaged by injuries right now. So that's a get-right game for them. They should win that game. And if they don't, then maybe you should start waving some red flags and hitting the panic button. But they're going to be okay. As for the Vikings, they're 2-0, and they're at home next week against a very good Texans team. So. We'll see how those two teams match up against each other. That's going to be a good game, I think. And like I said, for the 49ers, they got a get-right game against the Rams, a team that they've owned for a while now. And that team is just, again, completely banged up. And I think they should definitely win that game and get back on track. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the game. Let me know what you guys think, though. What were some of your takeaways from this game if you were able to watch it? So we're going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about Aaron Rodgers picking up his first win back after missing pretty much all of last year outside of 4 plays. Jets getting the win 24-17 over the Titans in Nashville. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.